If you want to learn a secret behind hitting the ball harder just like the pros, you have to learn how to use your body the right way. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So first thing we got to talk about is, where does power come from? We need to understand that most of the power we're going to generate really comes from the ground. So when you see big forehands, the thing we tend to look at is how fast the racket's moving, but we don't understand the energy being transferred to the ball. Let me give you an example. Just like if I was going to punch something right now, I could do this. And no matter how fast I move my arm, yeah, there might be some force, but watch what happens now if I slow it down and do this. Which one's going to have more power? Haha, number two. Why? Because instead of just using my body, or basically my arm and my shoulder, what I'm doing is now pushing against the ground and sending that energy up from my legs to my hips to my shoulders, and boom. And so the sequence is more important if you want to create more power without having so much effort. So the very first drill we need to work on is starting to use your legs. So there's two different methods we can use for using our legs. One is when we get a ball that's sometimes deep and we can load on this back leg to then push forward, and sometimes we don't have that option. Sometimes we're going to step forward and put our weight on our back leg and then use that to shift forward. So there's two different things you can do. First of all, I want you to get used to just loading up on the back leg. This might be unfamiliar for you. So what I want you to do is set a ball slightly behind you, just like this. So my toes right here. And all I'm going to do is go back down, and I'm going to toss the ball. The whole idea here is that I'm getting this leg loaded and then pushing it forward. So try this again. Do this as many times as it takes for you to get used to just going on the back leg and pushing forward. From here, then I want you to start picking up your racket, and you can get a couple balls and hit. The very first drill I want you to do when you have your racket is just load your weight on your back leg, okay? And what we're gonna do is push your weight forward. So I'm gonna push, okay? Now, obviously, you're not gonna hit a ball like this. Well, you could, but you're not gonna really hit it if you're set up. But I really want you to feel the push forward. Now, from here, we're gonna take the same thing. Now put our foot down. So I have my weight on my back leg, and I'm going to push. So the difference is I'm really jumping using this leg, making sure this leg is pushing. Now I'm going to have this foot down, and I'm going to push instead of jump. And this is going to cause me to push my weight forward through the ball. Again, I've loaded this leg down, so now I can take the weight and push it forward. And you can really feel yourself transferring a lot of the weight forward. Now the other situation is when you have to move up to the ball, which is actually the same thing. When you have to move up to the ball, I'm going to move up to the ball, but I'm going to move up in a way where this leg is still loaded. And then when I get up there, I'm going to push. Either way, you can practice this by doing this very simple drill and get used to loading more of your weight on the back leg and driving that weight through the ball. The second phase is understanding how to use my hips and my shoulders, because we've just now learned how to use our legs to load up power here, but we need to now learn how to coil and create separation. Now, what is coiling and separation? Just like a spring. If I coil up a spring, what happens? It wants to get back to that position that it was originally in. So now, let's go do a drill to show you exactly how to do that. This next drill is going to help us work on our hip and shoulder rotation, and how we can really accelerate our hips and have it almost be like a slingshot to get our shoulders moving faster. And so the very first position I want you to get into is almost in a neutral stance, meaning I'm hitting the ball this way. I would have my weight going in that direction. That kind of sets us up for what we were working on before. I want you to hold your racket out just like this, and all I want you to do is keep your hips forward and then turn your shoulders. Now your hips might turn a little bit, but try to resist this. So I'm going to practice this action here. So you can see from this angle, my hips are still forward, or my hips are still facing this direction, but my shoulders are this way. Now from here, what I want you to do is we want to make sure this front toe is slightly open. With that front toe slightly open, what I want you to do to start swinging forward is start the hip first. Okay, so it's like we're dancing here. It's like an Elvis dance or something. We got our hips going first, which is going to pull my shoulder through. So we're going to go back, hip forward, and then shoulder. Okay, back, creating the separation. We're going to turn our hips, and you're going to feel this right around here. Turn our hips, which is then going to send my shoulder forward. How we would practice this with a ball, it's the exact same way. I'm going to take my racket back here, and all I'm going to do is have my hand here. So when I drop the ball, instead of turning it all together, I'm going to have my lower half go first, and then my upper half be pulled by the lower half. So it'll look like this. Lower half, upper half. And I'm going to segment this just a little bit. So again, I'm going to have my lower half go first, boom, and then my upper half. And so what's happening is I'm already stretched from the separation, and I create more stretch right here by having my lower half go, and then that creates the energy to go forward. Now, it might not feel so seamless now because we have segmented where we're going lower, upper, but then what I want you to start doing is practicing putting it together. Not putting it together in the sense of doing it both at the same time, but having very little lag between the next step. So I'm going to go, I went lower, upper. But notice how it's much faster this time because I'm getting my hips to move first, causing my shoulder to get slingshot through the ball. Now, you might be saying, Kevin, how do I know if I'm doing it right? If you're creating more force, a lot of times I'll have players do this and actually hit the fence on purpose because before they couldn't hit the fence. This means you're creating more acceleration, more power that you can use through the ball. So again, my hips, shoulder, and then have my racket go through the ball. So now that we understand coiling, the next thing is understanding how to send our energy through the ball in the direction we want it to go. Because here's the thing, we're using all this energy from our legs, coiling up, we got the separation of hips and shoulders, but now when we start pushing and uncoiling, my arm generally is going to want to travel in a circle. Now, we want this circle to some extent because if I let it travel too much in a circle, my energy starts going that direction. I can still hit the ball pretty hard, but what I've realized, especially when I start channeling my energy behind the ball in the direction I want the ball to go, it's even harder because I have that energy alignment. And so what I mean by this is when I rotate, my arm's gonna go out towards my target. It actually feels like it's going away from my body. And so what you'll see is when pros get here, the racket is generally on the inside of the ball and the racket's coming around that semicircle and they go through the ball. You see this extension through the ball and then pretty much they're done. And what happens here, because they're sending that energy here, the racket keeps going and then the racket starts to drag the finish. And so it's not so much that you're going here to here, but you're really going here and then the racket does the end work. Now this next drill, I want you to do it up against a fence to start with. This will really help you kind of really figure out where your power is going because we want to see where the ball is going to land. So what I'm going to do is simply have the ball in this hand and I want you to actually pretend like you're punching first of all. So I'm going to punch and release the ball. And you can see how the ball is going straight, okay? Now I want you to also recognize that as I'm rotating my shoulders forward in this fashion. First is, I think what even I've in the past, and sometimes you see where people are talking about rotating. I'm rotating but releasing forward versus rotating and releasing around. So that's the very first drill I want you to do, where you feel like you're punching. The next part of this drill is to make it seem a little bit more like a stroke. And so what does a stroke feel like? And it's different for everybody. But in general, you have the sense of pushing the racket back and swinging forward. So I want you to push the racket back, which creates the coil, aka the unit turn, push the racket back, and go forward. Notice where the ball is going. It's going straight ahead. Compared to if I rotate it and released it around in a circle. I could do this, but you can see how the ball went over there. Versus I can do this, and you can see how the ball is going straight. Start with this drill, and then we're gonna go to the court and show you how you can do the exact same thing when you're hitting the ball. And now we wanna use our racket. So how would that work? Again, just like I was using my racket, however you take the racket back, in some sense, whether I take the racket back here or here, there's gonna be a moment, even if I'm in this position, where the hand is gonna go forward, pushing towards my target. And that's what I wanna have that feeling. That feeling as if, another analogy you could use, is if I'm taking my hand and I'm pushing it, pushing some books off a shelf. So if you feel yourself pushing the books off the shelf, and then it comes around. And so what I really want to focus on is making sure that my shoulder's going to push out, and then my racket's going to naturally come around. So I'm going to show you how to do it slowly, and then I'm going to ramp up the speed a little bit. So now I'm going to be in the same position that I was at the fence, and I'm going to focus on pushing through the ball. And you can see how my shoulder still came around. Even though I'm pushing, boom, my racket's going to pull my arm and shoulder around. So we want to practice this pushing through the ball, because now my weight and the power I'm developing is going directly through the ball, and that's exactly what you want. There's two more things we need to really understand. We have the alignment of the power, but now one of the most important things is how do we get the ball to go where we want? We have alignment of hitting it, but we need the ball to go exactly where we want. And this comes down to something called spot targeting. I read a great book that I'll leave a link in the description. And I love this method of thinking about targeting, which means this: I want you to look at this green dot ball right here. And if you can see this green dot, imagine this is a bullseye. And imagine me having a gun. If I shot through the bullseye, where's the bullet gonna go? The bullet's gonna go straight that way. Now, if I change, hopefully you can see that, if I change it on the inside and shot from it this way, where's the ball gonna go? It's gonna go that way. So wherever the green dot target is, if I hit the ball there, that's where the ball's gonna go. Another thing is if the target is a little lower, the ball's going to go higher, and if it's a little higher, it's going to go lower. If you've ever heard Andre Agassi talking about his way of targeting the ball, when he thinks about hitting an inside-out forehand, he actually thinks of hitting the inside of the ball, what I call the inside of the ball, which is for him 9 o'clock and going to 3 o'clock. So he's making contact at 9 and going over to 3. He also talks about if he wants to hit a lob, he's going from 4 o'clock up to 7. These are different methods of him recognizing where he wants to hit the ball. And so now that we understand channeling that energy, we want to start focusing on where on the ball that we want to hit. So right now, I'm going to focus on hitting the outside of the ball. So remember, if we had a gun and we had a target, our bullseye is not directly behind, it's actually more on the outside. And so if I do my punch and get on the outside of the ball, driving through the cross court, you're going to get more balls that go cross court. Now, if I hit more of the back of the ball, okay, still coming from the inside, hitting the back of the ball and punch through, I'm gonna get more balls that go down the line. This becomes a very potent recipe for adding power and precision, because there's no sense in creating power if you can't get the ball to go where you want. But let's say I want to hit a heavy ball, I would still drive through and up. It's really important that even if I want to hit heavy, I'm just going to add spin coming up through the ball as I still align my power that I'm using for my legs getting all the way up through the ball. Now there's one more important thing that you got to understand, because you may not be able to get into the right stance you want. I'm going to talk about two stances that are hugely important. And I'm going to put my racket down for a second. So what that is the neutral stance, where I'm stepping into the ball, and the open stance. Now, let's go back to that punching example. If I'm in an open stance, and even if I twist, how hard can I hit the ball or hit something? Well, I can still hit it pretty hard. But here's the thing that the open stance lacks in most cases. I'm not really loading my weight and pushing it forward. There are different ways you can kind of do this, but it's not as efficient if I'm in a neutral stance. Now I can really load my weight backwards and then push it forwards. So what this means is, in general, when you have an opportunity, start stepping in and using a neutral stance to transfer your weight forward. Another stance that I don't want to get too much into, which is a semi-open stance, is that it has the benefit that you can do this also. So start using more neutral and semi-open stances when you're in position. Now, obviously, if you're not in position and you're on the run and you have no choice, you can still use an open stance and hit fairly hard. But you can watch pros like Sinner, Djokovic, when they have an opportunity to really step into the ball, they do, because they realize how much more power they can use by using the ground force and still using rotation of their hips and shoulders to hit powerful strokes when they hit it. Now, you're probably thinking we're all done, but there's one more thing that I want to give you as a bonus, because once you learn how to do this and you've done all the exercises, one more element that the pros use and understand is that all this is dependent on how strong your legs are and how strong your body is. And I have a special video that'll help you do that right here. So go watch that video and it'll show you a very simple workout you can do to start increasing the strength of your legs, to start increasing more power without having to muscle and try so hard, because you have great sequencing and you're getting stronger.